about twice that. The oil spread over about 10,000 square miles of Alaska's coastal ocean. Here's the bottom of the tanker as it was hauled out in dry dock later on. That's not the way an oil tanker tanks and cargo tanks and hulls should look. It was a single-hulled tanker. There was an inadequate vessel traffic system, a horrible spill response capability. I mean, all the things that could go wrong did. And it was simply they left it on autopilot in the middle of the night. The skipper was off the bridge. Yeah, he had been drinking, but he wasn't on the bridge. He didn't make the wrong decision, except for not being on the bridge. And they left it on autopilot, gave a command to turn it back in the tanker lanes, and it didn't turn, and they ran full steam into the reef. Thank you. Okay, we're going to roll through these quickly. 1,300 miles of shoreline ended up with a lot of oil on it. We still have today tens of thousands of gallons of oil in our beaches from 20 years ago. Exxon paid $2 billion trying to respond to this and clean it up. They did not recover more than 5% of what was spilled. The take-home message is that if you spill it, you've lost. And there's no way you can contain it. You can't clean it up. You can't rehabilitate oiled wildlife. You cannot restore spill-injured ecosystems. You cannot compensate or otherwise stabilize injured societies and communities. You just can't do it. So the choices you make today about whether to lift this moratorium on east-west tanker traffic in northern BC are utterly important. The question needs to be, do you really want to pose this sort of a risk to northern BC waters? Are there alternatives for getting tar sands oil to market? Do you really want to get tar sands oil to market? If you do, it can be piped straight south the way it's coming now, and you avoid risk to all these incredible resources. We had millions of organisms die in the first year of the oil spill. Many, many more die years to come. Some of our native leaders called this the day the water died, and indeed it did. These pictures are still hard to look at. I'm just rolling through them as quickly as I can. So the take-home message is, from a planning standpoint, you do need to plan. Somebody was over here asking about areas to be avoided and routing agreements for vessels and such. That needs to be part of PNCIMA, I think. And you need to make a decision. And excuse me for saying what you need to do and what you don't. This is entirely your decision. This is your home, not mine. But I would hate to see you have to endure the sorts of pain and environmental injury and economic disruption that we did. We knew there was a risk of this. We knew we had, and we've had seabird. We have some injured populations that are not recovering at all 20 years later. Pigeon guillemots, Pacific herring collapsed, and one pod of killer whales are not recovering. The native communities of Prince William Sound will never be the same. These two, Tutitlik and Chiniga Bay, because they rely utterly on coastal resources. So there are ways to mitigate risk of shipping. You've got the risk right now in northern British Columbia. You've got all the cargo vessel coming in and out of Prince Rupert. You've got the Trans-Alaska Pipeline tankers sailing outside of Haida Gwaii, one of the most spectacular places in the world. And you've got condensate tankers sailing into Kitimat that do not have tug escorts. And in my professional judgment, that is insane. Every one of these vessels that has the potential risk of causing a catastrophic spill needs to have a tug escort. You need to have a robust Citizens Advisory Council process that has its own funding, staff, and mandate to provide oversight to government and industry in shipping risks. And maybe that, I think tomorrow's focus of this forum is to talk about stakeholder engagement. I think that's utterly critical. That's the one thing that has fixed our system. Most of the improvements in our tanker system have come from citizen pushing through our Citizens Council. And 2 minutes. All right, good. Well, I'll relax and talk a little bit longer. We have hundreds of fishing vessels that are on contract from the pipeline terminal, trained to be spill responders. I mean, this is an economic opportunity, too. If they're going to be shipping through your waters, these companies have a responsibility to have people and equipment trained and on the ready, just like a fire department ready to put out the fire in your house. And it's a way of getting fishing vessels employed. Who's going to be the first responders to an oil spill in the first place? It's going to be fishing vessels. No question about it. So escort tugs escorting every tanker in and out of these narrow passages. And plus, of course, we have double-hull tankers now. We have one single-hull tanker still in our fleet. Ironically, it's the sister ship to the Exxon Valdez, but her retirement date through our Oil Pollution Act is the end of this year. Then we'll have all double-hull tankers. But beyond that, so the new tankers that the companies are building have double engines, double rudders, bow thrusters, far beyond even what our federal mandate is. So the industry got it. This one cost Exxon billions and billions of dollars and a lot of political capital, and that's the way it should be. So they're building safer ships than the federal government of the United States even requires these days. So we need to raise the bar elsewhere. And I think that's the last image I have. I wanted to mention I brought about 10 copies of these, the then and now, 1989 to 2009. Things we've changed in our oil transport system in Alaska, which is arguably one of the safest oil transport systems anywhere in the world, as well as an annual report for our Regional Citizens Advisory Council. As long as they last, you folks can have them. I'm around for these couple of days, and one last quick anecdote. I usually end these by saying I'm willing to help in any way with your efforts to get clear on these risks and to minimize these as much as possible. I was in an island in the Bismarck Sea north of Papua New Guinea a couple of years ago, talking to this very, very traditional tribal village about the risks of offshore deep sea mining project that was proposed, and I offered this to them. I said, I'll help you in any way. And then there was this long discussion amongst the village leaders and through the translators, and I asked my translator, what are they talking about? And he said, I don't know. And so finally they said, they want to know if you will come help them attack the ship. And I said, well, there's a lot of other things we can do. I was thinking in the very Western thinking, the environmental impact statement, litigation, and I said, there's a lot of other things we can do, but you know what? Save me a place in your canoe. So I will offer that to all of you as well. Thank you.